Last meeting, when Matt and Craig were here, you guys really started to work in depth into the needs assessment spreadsheets, right? You were kind of going building by building, space by space, did small group discussions, talked about it. We took your feedback and wove in some of that feedback back into that information. As you know, we continue to engage the district to be sure we kind of keep collecting as much information as possible. So Craig and I spent some time with the Jackson team. So we met with the principal, Lenny, over there, and talked more with him specifically about kind of how they're using the building, what's working, what's not, what are some of his goals and the district's goals in terms of academic vision going forward. Then we actually spent some time with their staff. So we did a listening session with the teachers over at Jackson, again, just to continue to be sure we clearly understand kind of what they see as the positives and where they see the challenges in those buildings are. And a lot of that feedback aligns. There weren't a lot of surprises there, so we've kind of woven in some of that. And really what we've handed back out to you in the 11 by 17s is the updated version of that spreadsheet. Okay, and again, that's really just meant as a tool for us as a group, just to have a basis for defining what the needs are we're solving. Okay, so it's really meant to be a working document. So if we as a group say, oh yeah, we should add this to it, or no, we want to change the wording of that, we can keep massaging that document as we go along the process.
Does this stuff go along then to the school board?
Yes, it would eventually be provided to the school board. Yep. The school board had actually, in our last meeting, requested that we weave in a little more detail into this. And I don't know if Craig maybe presented this in the last meeting, but you see some color coding on that. And that color coding just helps communicate where some of that information came from, where was some of the sources of that information, whether that was provided by this committee, provided by staff, or if it was analysis that our team had done on our tours of the building. So again, it just helps give a bit more context to that information. Okay. So not a lot of detail to point out there. It looks, and there really aren't many significant changes to that list. So I think a lot of the dialogue you as a group had in your last meetings had been documented there. Okay, so more for you to replace the old one with the new one if you'd like, and we'll continue to build on that as we go forward. Okay, any questions about that piece?
So I guess it's labeled preliminary needs summary, but what if some of these could be identified as wants? And I haven't had a chance to really look at it. I just got it.
Yeah, and so kind of the whole conversation, needs versus wants, tends to step more into the subjective opinion of the reader, right, as much as anything. And so what we're attempting to do is just objectively document what we've heard, okay, and take information provided from staff, our opinion professionally, walking through those buildings, as well as what your feedback was for us. And the definition of what's a need, and even of the needs, if we look at it that way, there are probably some that you see are higher priorities than others, and that's really the next step of what we're going to go through. Okay, and so our hope tonight was that we're going to start to talk about solutions, okay, and start to talk about how do we solve these needs and what might those solutions look like. And so our hope was, as kind of a game plan for the rest of the meeting, would be to start to, in small groups, talk about some potential solutions. Okay, and we're going to introduce these to you. What we're looking at calling solutions are not proposals. Okay, we're not here saying this is the option or this is kind of the direction we think we need to go. But we found, working with groups like this, it's usually best to have you react to something, okay, and then start to build from it, right? And so there are certain things we think work really well. There's certain areas that we think still need improvement, but we hope as a group that we can start to build on those, and we'll kind of work our way through those as we go through tonight. Okay? The goal really is not to talk costs yet. We know that's going to be a critical factor. You know, what would it cost to do this, or wouldn't it be cheaper to do it this way? And probably there are going to be those dialogues, but that's really where we're going to bring that CM partner on board to help us analyze that piece of it. Really right now, I think you should be analyzing these and providing feedback based on kind of what you see as an ideal solution. Okay? The other piece to keep in mind too is that we should be really thinking of these as a master plan as much as possible. Okay, and so even if we are pushing some ideas a little further, or you think, boy, that scope seems to be creeping, That's okay at this point in the process, because we're not applying what is affordable. How much can we afford to do or not, right? We're going to get there eventually, but if we don't start by thinking master plan, big picture, let's get everything on the board, we can't work backwards strategically. Okay, so there may be a first phase to this, that as long as we invest appropriately in this first phase, we've set the district up well for future investments to see out this master plan. Okay, so again, make sure your mindset, as much as possible, keep it as broad as we can. Okay? So what we thought we would do is maybe start with the high school and walk through a diagrammatic floor plan solution at a very high level. Like, we'll toss out some ideas, some thoughts that we started to build around, and then what we're going to do is hand out a series of worksheets again that we're going to ask you guys as small groups to start to talk about. Okay? And you can take notes on these, you can sketch on them, we talk about what you like, what you don't like, what works, and then what we'll do is kind of report back and have a bit of a dialogue. And our hope is that what we can do is spend the time between now and our next meeting updating this based on this feedback, so next time we come back we have a concept that reflects tonight's conversation, okay, and we kind of keep building on it that way. And then we're going to do the same thing at Jackson as well. So Craig's going to pull up the high school floor plan, and what we'll do is walk you through it, and then we'll hand out the sheets for each of the tables. So what we've started with is the existing building floor plan, and in the walls that you see, everything in gray is the existing building, and the areas that we're starting to diagram some color over are areas that we're considering, and you are considering, some potential scope in and around. Okay, and what we can do here, and I don't know, Craig, would you like to? Why don't I get started, and then you can talk through some of the details. In a building like this at the high school, as you can imagine, as soon as you kind of make one potential move, you set a bit of a domino effect in motion, right? You displace some folks, and you got to find a new home for others. And what we try our best to do is start by solving some of the biggest puzzle pieces first, right? Because if we get those biggest pieces in the right place, all the other pieces seem to fall and align much easier. Okay? And so what we've really started to target were some of the key categories that you discussed as a group in the last meeting. So there are areas like the STEM, STEAM, tech ed area of the building that has art and our welding area and some of our computer labs. We've talked about safety and security, and specifically around how visitors access the building and how maybe we can get a secure entry sequence, get the admin up at a main entry, so we're bringing folks in through a main entry. We spent some time looking at the science labs and a potential renovation of the science department. We noted the locker rooms as a group as an area that we may want to consider some renovation investment. And also up in the libraries as another focus. Okay, and so why don't I start just kind of with a bit of a intro. So our initial focus was right in the center of the building around the STEM, STEAM, tech ed environments. And we thought, you know, there's a ton of potential in that area to do some great things. First, we want to start by thinking about the organization of the building. Okay, so when we're talking STEM, you know, science, technology, engineering, math, we have the opportunity there to weave in art into that, right? Because art is kind of located in that end of the building as it is. We know the art labs are a bit outdated as they are today, and maybe a bit crammed in some of their spaces, need some more storage space. So that's an area, if we could find a solution so that we can better organize art to give them a bit of an expansion, maybe get them some natural light into their area, it might be a positive. But in that, if we can find a way to start to, sorry, that's a great song.
Kind of disruptive though.
No, it's okay.
Someone from Phoenix too, they're probably calling me, telling me how warm it is.
One of the key goals to really make STEM successful educationally really is finding ways to cross, kind of contaminate those curriculums, right? How can we think of that more from a cross-disciplinary standpoint? How do we get overlap? How do we get teachers to team teach and get collaboration? How do we get students from one class working with another class around project-based pieces? STEM as a kind of a project-based delivery is more of a hands-on educational philosophy, and in that it's more about process than it is end product often. And so with that, we see a lot more presentations and a lot more peer-to-peer critiques as part of that process. And so oftentimes what we would hear is if we had an environment that was more of a, I'll call it STEM commons, if you will, if you can imagine kind of a larger shared common space, that all of these classroom types start to march around, because they're all specialty classrooms, right? They're really not kind of interchangeable in a lot of ways, right? Because they all have their unique curriculums and unique equipment, that if you create a STEM common space that allows all of them to start to share and spill out and start to collaborate together, is a great way to start to organize around that curriculum. Okay? And so our initial thought was that in this concept, if we could target an area centrally located, easily accessible, we have some great circulation wrapping around this already. So this color here, Craig, right? I have that right. This is our main street corridor that links east to west across the building. We then have our two north-south corridors that are connecting to the art and then down into the auxiliary gym and some of the back of house here. And then we have kind of some internal connection points. But it's all right at the middle of the building. If we could start to carve out some space, make that more open, we really could kind of spill that circulation right through the STEM Commons area and then start to wrap that with some of these specialty spaces.